also um let in the guests. There's two people. So, okay. This one. Okay, there we are. Hello. Hi, Ritu. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. And then I believe I saw Amanda, but I don't know if she made it in. Oh, there we are. Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, we are going to get started on time. I always get very excited about that. Um, so, hello, welcome. My name is Camila Cruz, and I want to welcome you to Who's on Your Grief Support Team. We're really excited today to talk about, pretty much during Mental Health Awareness Month, we thought it would be a really great time to talk about who's really supporting you and the people that you love when you're experiencing loss, because obviously there's so many different losses that can happen to us, from the loss of people to ambiguous loss that we experience. So that's the reason for us being here today. So my name is Camila Cruz. I am the founder of Sorry for Your Loss, and it's a platform where we have honest conversations about grief and loss. And I created the platform after the loss of my parents. And I'm going to pass it over to my guests to introduce themselves. So I'll pass it over to you, Nikki.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to have this conversation. I'm Nikki Simone. I am a certified grief coach, and I call myself a journaling workshop facilitator, very passionate about using writing as a tool to, process your grief. And I also started this entrepreneurial path in my social media account after the loss of my dad, Donnie, 13 years ago. So on the side of the griever and now the coach, of course, this is a very passionate topic of mine. So happy to be here.
Great.
Hello.
Thank
I'm sorry.
you.
Hello, I'm grateful to be here. My name is Sundari Malcolm, and I came to this work. I lost my mother in 2007 to breast cancer. I was her caregiver for most of my 20s, and then lost my father to complications from brain cancer when I was 31, and I've experienced multiple miscarriages. I've spent the last 18 years now as a birth, grief, and death doula, and I am the author of the book Grief Gems. And I am the founder of a Healing Doula Academy. So we train humans how to be grief and death doulas rooted in ancient spiritual and holistic modalities and traditions.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. So first, I want to start off, obviously, you both have personal experience with loss, as do I. So when you first started your journey, what grief resources were you aware of, and what did you take to? I'll
I'll
let
jump right
either
in.
one of you. Yeah.
I'll jump right in. That's a really great question, and I think that so my timeline was 2013, and the world was not talking about mental health and grief the way that it is now. And my experience was I just jumped right into therapy. I jumped right into traditional, I call them traditional ways, therapy and medication, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. That's kind of what I think society at that time in the world would have you believe, that those were your only options. And I didn't really know what else was out there. That was very much just like my knee jerk reaction. Like within days of my dad passing away, I found a therapist that I had known, and I got myself on medication. And I will say that I thought it was helping me at the time, but as I moved through my own journey with grief, I saw that it really wasn't for me personally. And that is not to discount it, because I see the value in it, but I think it was a lesson in the fact that I want to keep an open mind when I was going through my grief. But when you're in those when you're in the thick of it, you're just surviving. And I just think I was in that survival mode. And I was like, okay, I'm going to check the boxes. I'm going to do these things. But that's kind of, I don't regret it because I know that I had to go through that the way that I did. It's a part of my journey. It's a part of my story. I eventually made my way into support groups and some very more holistic ways of healing. Now I'm sort of on that side of the fence of things as a coach myself. But yeah, the research, I guess, Googling things of like, how do you help yourself through grief? Like, it really wasn't where it is now. There weren't platforms like this. Like, there weren't chats like this that I could just tune into and learn about all the things to help me. And I wasn't educated on it. And grief, what was grief? I didn't even really use that language in the beginning. I don't think I knew I was grieving. I was just upset. I was mad. I was 24 too. I was a very naive and emotionally immature 24-year-old. So I'm glad that we are doing something like this because I feel like a younger version of me could have really benefited from a chat like this to know what else is out there rather than finding yourself in like a roadblock in something that might not be working. And I didn't know that it wasn't working until you kind of feel like stuck in it a little bit. So yeah, I'm just glad to be talking about this, but it was a journey for me. And it was very interesting. So happy to hear from anybody else.
My story feels a little bit similar. When my mother died, I was 27, and I had been raised with spiritual teachings, but had not connected that to grief, right? Or that it could help me with grief. These were modalities and practices and stuff I had grown up with, but like it was not part of the grief conversation. And my brain had not made that connection yet. And I'll be honest that I didn't turn to any of those healing modalities when this happened. Like, raised with them and practicing them in your 20s are completely different, right? So when my mother died, I honestly spent like 6 months smoking weed and laying on the couch and watching the Food Network. Like, that's all I was capable of. And I eventually also tried therapy, and I was put on, I forget what medication, but something. And it was like a cousin a few months later that was like, you're like a robot now. Like, what's changed? It had just like completely wiped my personality. And I also like, I had tried a couple, but one of them cried, one of the therapists like cried during a session because my story was so sad to her, right? And it was like it just was never really a good fit. And then the medicine was doing like funky things to my gut and my personality, and eventually I decided to come off that medication, leave those therapists because they weren't really working. And I went to a yoga class because I knew that I needed silence, but I was scared to be alone in silence, right? Like, I knew I needed stillness, but I was not ready to do that by myself. And I went to a group class, and it was the first time that I think my nervous system felt safe. I was still surrounded by people, but I was invited into like stillness, but there was someone guiding it so you weren't left with your thoughts for too long. It was like everything I needed in that moment.
Yeah.
And that became my entry back in. It's like, oh, these practices, which were always designed to help bring balance to you, are exactly what I need right now.
Yeah.
And so applying them to myself is how I got started.
Yeah, and I think you both bring up very good points. And just I want to make a disclaimer that none of us are licensed therapists. We are speaking from our own lived experiences, and we all have respective training and or started businesses, etc. And that's where we're speaking from. And the whole purpose of this conversation also is to bring awareness to different things that we've either experienced ourselves and or have become more knowledgeable, and to bring more awareness to. Me personally, I know that I was very much taught about, hey, therapy being an option, or I should say seeking, because I don't come from a family that goes to therapy. I'm a first generation child of an immigrant. So I'm one of the first people in my immediate family to actually seek therapy. And I did that as I was discussing with the ladies before we hopped on that I actually did it as the last resort because my mom actually passed away in 2001 and I didn't go to therapy seriously until my dad passed away in 2022 because I just hit a massive wall and just was completely debilitated and I had no other options. But then as I became into this grief work is when I started to realize like, oh, outside of talk therapy, there are some other options. And specifically for people of color too, like there are barriers to going to therapy. So it's like, what are some other things that people can explore that are not just talk therapy? Because I want to pose this question to you ladies, like what if we're not doing talk therapy, right? What are some other options that you would propose to people that they can maybe explore that can help them move through grief, just to have other options? And just as you discussed with the medication, right? None of you are saying, oh, don't do it. It's just more so it didn't work for you. And sometimes it doesn't work for people. So if someone's in your shoes, they're experiencing grief, and perhaps the medication and the therapy, whether maybe it did work for a time, let's use that. And now maybe they're like, I want to explore something different because maybe they are taking a more holistic route. What are some of the other options that you believe are things that they should look at if I don't want to try therapy or I come to the end of my therapy journey? What are some other things I might want to add into the mix?
Yeah, I'll definitely chime in and speak from my personal experience. And I can agree too with the medication. I was on medication that kind of numbed me out and I felt like I was avoiding it. So if you find yourself getting to sort of like, I was hitting like a wall, I was like, I'm not really moving through this grief. It's sort of, we're having the same conversation in therapy. So what I did was a Google search. I searched, I would recommend looking up maybe a support group. That was something that really helped me. That's just one way. I did a 13-week grief support group and it was work. Like we used a workbook. We had open discussions. We watched like video clips and it gave me language. That's what I always say. Like it finally gave me the language and it made me sort of start to clearly see my grief and to not feel so crazy. And it finally gave me like a glimpse into a hopeful future because I wasn't really seeing that for myself. So I feel like a support group, whether it's a 13-week program or whether it's something that you meet monthly, like there's so many support groups out there, especially in this space that we're all involved in. You can do them virtually, you can do them in person. Support groups are just so like gentle and welcoming, and usually they're non-therapeutic. So I'll give kudos to support groups for that. It was helpful for me. And then obviously I'll plug coaching. Coaching again is non-therapeutic. You can work one-on-one with somebody in a virtual setting or in person. And that is, I think of coaching as guidance. Sometimes the word even coach irks me a little bit. I think of myself as a guide, as a mentor, as a support system, just gently holding somebody's hand, meeting them where they are, and walking them into the future in some really positive ways and helpful ways. That's obviously one avenue. And then I don't want to speak too much to the holistic side of things. I don't have obviously experience like doing any of it, but I guess as a receiver of those services, I found my way to things like breath work and Reiki, meditation. I can't speak highly enough. I wish that I found those modalities when my dad died. It was one of those like aha moments. I was like, grief, the fact that, knowing that grief is energy and it needs to be moved, that didn't register in my brain until only a couple of years ago. I was very much thinking that it was up here. And obviously I knew it was in here, but I had no idea that it was such like embedded into our cells and our bones and our souls. Like, I cannot speak highly enough, and I don't want to be the person to talk more about this, but just receiving that treatment has, even now, 13 years later, I'm dealing with my own grief from my father. My grandfather just passed recently, so it's great to have things like that in your toolbox too. So that was kind of a lot, but I've tried a lot of things, as you can tell. So there's a lot of options out there.
Luckily,
I love
Sundari
that.
can tell us all about the
No, I
swag.
love what you said. It was like the perfect segue. I loved everything you said, Nikki. I think something that's important to remember is when people hear things like breathwork, meditation, Reiki, um, any of these modalities, people automatically switch into kind of what has been programmed in your brain, right? Which is that these are new age techniques. And I think one of the most important things to start with is like none of this is new. So what you are actually doing is going back to what people in your lineage did in the beginning. And it worked for a reason. And I think like that's a good place to start, is remembering like you're not trying something new and woo-woo. You are saying what is new is actually not working for me, and I would like to go back to what is old and traditional and ancient. I think when you move forward from that, it's understanding that all of our ancestors understood that, as Nikki said, everything is energy. And so that lives in your body, whether it's happiness, sadness, anger, whatever it is, it absolutely starts in the body. And we know this from a very like happy place, right? When we can say like, when I'm happy, my stomach gets butterflies, or like my hands start to sweat, whatever it is. When I'm anxious, my face gets red. Like you actually recognize how your body responds to all of these things. Yet when it comes to grief, we are very like, nope, that can only be fixed here. And that's actually really silly, right? So it's also like, now let's come to step 2 of understanding, well, then it has to live in the body. There are cultures that have long studied where it lives in the body. So it lives in your liver and it lives in your kidneys, right? It sits in your lungs. It absolutely lives within your cellular memory, right? And we can think about that again when it's outside of grief, when we say habits get passed down, right? Like somebody will say like, oh, you act just like your grandma, or your grandpa used to laugh like that, or you're like, we understand how things pass this way, but yet we don't seem to understand that if it can pass through generations, then it certainly can live in a single generation in the single body and stay stuck if we're not intentional about moving it. I think which modality you choose will also have to be particular to your own personality, right? There's some people that get very pulled to energetic work like Reiki, like limpias, like laying of hands, right? Which can be linked to the church or to spiritual work. But there are people that get called to that. And then there are people who are called to meditation and breath work. My work as a spiritual guide and through the academy, and also as someone who's done this myself, is you have to try them all and figure out what feels best for me. I think what has always been undertaught, undereducated, those are not words, but you get what I'm saying. What has not been distilled correctly to the population is that when you ignore the grief, when you think that it can be handled in the mind, your body is a very beautiful computer, which in order to keep you surviving is going to protect you by shutting down. So when grief sticks in the lungs and in the liver and the kidneys and sits in your cells and you stay in the head, your body is going to let you keep functioning. The brain is going to do what it needs to do so that you can survive because it loves you. But at some point, it's going to reach capacity. And so whether that presents itself as rashes, right, eczema, headaches, reproductive issues, autoimmune issues, it will absolutely start flaring. Whether it takes 3 years or 5 or 10 or 20, that depends on how you've been living until then. But it never goes away. It's not just going to disappear. And so if we now know all of these things, this is not new. This is absolutely ancient. This is how people used to teach and learn and move things through. If I ignore this, it's going to rear its ugly ass later. Then I think about it like, for my future self, even if I'm not ready yet mentally, my future self should not still be having to deal with the remnants of this, right? Meaning I don't need an autoimmune issue 15 years from now because I didn't think breath work was important now, right? And so to me, it feels like there are very simple ways to get into it. Maybe classes are too weird. I always tell people, like, when you're in the shower, that's one of the most powerful things. Water is a communicator. That is ancient. Stand in the shower and close your eyes, turn the overhead lights off, light a candle, and take a few breaths. Just listen to the water. That's it. If that was all you did, you have now just done a water ritual, which is what ancient communities used to do. You've now just done breath work. You're listening to the sound of water, which is calming your brain, right? There are really passive ways to do this, like standing in the sun for a few minutes and not thinking, but being like, what does this feel like against my skin? Because what you have to do is start to feel safe in your body first before you get to breaking down the grief. So you can't get there before the nervous system understands that it is okay now to fully feel. And you can't do that by outpacing it or outrunning it. You're going to have to teach the body what rest looks like now. What does safety feel like? What is relaxation? Like, your body literally doesn't remember anymore, and it's always bracing for impact. So you're going to have to reprogram your computer, right? So if that's taking water and instead of just chugging it, being like, I'm allowing this water to run through my body and reach the cells that need some help today, right? Like, these are little things, but they make a difference because they're bringing you back to your body, which is absolutely what you must connect with in order to move forward.
But it's so interesting about that. It's such a foundational reset, but culturally, we're just like,
it's ridiculous.
I always say grief introduced me to myself, or like brought me back to myself, because it's like I started listening to my body, or I should say, finally started to hear my body, because I couldn't hear it before because it was just, I wasn't listening for it. And now I like listen for it. And there's so many things I'm like, ooh, I can catch, like, oh, my sleep is off. And like there's so many little things. And then funny enough, I've not been sick in like almost 2 years. But guess what? I also haven't been corporate. And listen, this is not to listen because I miss my corporate money. Okay. So listen, no one is over here taking the machine. Okay. I do miss it. But I will say, from a health standpoint, like, I have not been sick. Like, it's totally different because it seems like the noise is just like gone from so many other things. So now I'm able to focus on things. And also there's a lack of distraction. So even though things are difficult, right? I was like, what I say now, I approach life so much more soberly, meaning like, I probably have a drink like once a quarter, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I haven't had a drink in a really, really long time, right? Like, everything is just very like, oh, I'm not like trying to buffer everything as much as I used to, which is so interesting. Whereas before I'd be like, oh, I need something to like buffer the impact that is about to your point of like bracing for impact. So it's just very interesting because it's almost like, with your spiritual work, I'd be so interested to know how people take to coming to it, because even though it's centuries old and it's really in our DNA, the way that we're culturally taught that we have to earn relaxation. So how is it that you begin to actually listen to your body when we're taught that grief is something that we never have time to do, regardless of it's like, no matter how much money you have, I feel like whether you are a wealthy person or whether you are struggling, it's like you never have time to deal with your grief.
I mean, I think that one of the reasons why I think spirituality is really beautiful, and I want to say, when I say spirituality, I do not mean like Lululemon mainstream spirituality, right? So I just want to clear that up. No offense to Lululemon if they're like watching this, but there's a real difference in like trendy spirituality, right? And what is like real embodied spirituality. And part of that can be very scary in that you have to have an understanding that I am my own savior. And the only way to the other side is through me. is through this. And so I think when you're asking people, like, how do we approach this, or how do we make people used to this? It's like, one, really having to understand that, like, you are the power you have been waiting for. You're the guide you have been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
And as your own teacher, in learning this, the quickest way to get yourself there is through ritual. You're going to have to, like, set up a schedule for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to say, this is extremely important. And I am my own best guide, teacher, healer, facilitator, all of it. And if I need to, in my phone, say at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock, I'm going to try these things, then that's what I have to do. Ritual is how you remind your subconscious, right? If you take all of the other stuff out of it, to pattern your body to remember the habit of rest is how you become comfortable in rest. Sometimes we're trying to skip steps, right? If I jump into this once a week, this is going to work. Like, nope. If I do this once a month, this is going to work. It actually doesn't. We're much more complicated than that. And you are much more patterned to look for what is wrong and terrible and impactful than what is restful and kind and graceful, right? We've literally been programmed in the opposite way. And so you're going to have to, and the only way to do that until it becomes an embodied part of your life is through scheduling yourself to devote time to yourself.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Oh, so many interesting things. Okay. Like you have my wheels turning.
This is so empowering. Like, that was so empowering what you said. Like, we're going to save ourselves, and it's not going to be like anybody else. Like, it has to come from us. And I wish I had, like, your knowledge in the beginning of when I lost my dad. It's just so important. Like you said, these have been around forever. And I'm starting to now, like, do my own research and read up on these things, because I love it. I love knowing that our ancestors did all of this, and it's kind of been pushed to the side, and now, like, more traditional things like therapy and medication are pushed on us. But it's like, what about these very natural, easy ways? Like, I love your shower example. I love doing that. Like, going outside. Like, I'm a big, like, put your feet in the earth, put your eyes in the sun. Like, it is morning sun to me is a ritual that I do, because I think that it's so important. And just grounding and being present and giving yourself time to just, like, breathe. It's like, I wish somebody told me to, like, just breathe and go look in the sun, 12 years ago. I probably would have not needed so much medication. And I just, there's also, like, that body keeps the score. I believe that too. Like, it lives in your body. And I had some of my own, like, health issues sort of manifest, and I realized I wasn't processing my grief, and I was getting, like you said, like, autoimmune things, or, like, I was dealing with some sinus stuff. And I haven't had any really health issues, like you said too, Camila, like, in so long, because I've actually been listening. And there's so much to be said, like, so much great wisdom that you provided. So yes.
And the good thing is, you don't need to have I feel like you don't need the knowledge, you need the resource, right? And that's why we're here, is like, okay, what are the resources and how can people find them? Because that is the important thing, is like, I don't want people, none of us want people to feel like, okay, if therapy is not for them, then there are no other options. Therapy was very helpful for me. I found the right therapist. She actually did ketamine therapy, and that was extremely helpful for me. And I did that for I saw my therapist for like a year and a half. And it was extremely helpful for me. But then once I was done with therapy, it was like, okay, what do I do now? And even during that time, I actually did hot yoga. So that was super helpful. I went and got my certificate. So like, I noticed like doing yoga was very, very helpful for me to just move my body and really kind of have that constant movement. If I don't do it, I notice a big difference when I'm not practicing yoga as well. So there were like a number of different things where I felt like there was like this really great menu. I did group as well. So it was really nice. I called them my GGs, where it was like, okay, I'm with my group. So it was really great to be in community with women. And we had all happened to lose our dads as well. So there was this community of women that understood what I was going through. So I had like a menu that I could kind of pick from of things. And then also just, of course, like my community of friends and family. But I do love the fact that there's different things that you all are recommending that people can do, even if they're not necessarily getting into those things. So I do want to talk about that, because we know economically, everyone may not have access to all of these resources. So what are like 1 to 2 things that you recommend if someone cannot do someone doesn't have health insurance, or if they, maybe did already see a therapist, etc. What's like 1 to 2 things someone could do free, low cost, to just get themselves started to moving towards healing on their grief journey?
I'll recommend one, and that's sound healing. And I'll say, like, you don't need to go to a sound healer. You can do this on YouTube, right? Free links. Why is sound healing so powerful? I think what we were not taught in America, but what you can Google and find out yourself, is that the frequency of music was changed at a certain year, right? And it was changed after a certain war by a certain group. And that frequency was changed to a hertz, to a level that induces anxiety. It actually makes you angrier. This is the frequency now shared by most mainstream music. So all of the music that you're listening to on the radio, all of it is tuned to that. And you can do your own research on that. There is music that is then made for specific healing frequencies. Now, again, this is not new, right? These were the frequencies that existed before the new frequency was created. So ancient frequencies that play at a level that impacts your cells, because what did we talk about before? The cells hold on to memory, right? There's a beautiful study by a Chinese Harvard scientist who spoke about, I don't know if anyone has seen it, where you can put the water next to a certain frequency, and if you speak into it hateful words, the water changes to pick up certain somatic patterns under a microscope. When you speak love into it, the water changes and shows you a completely different pattern, right? This is how sound and the intention impacts water. Your body is made up of lots and lots of water. What you were listening to is changing how your cells respond. So what we are usually listening to is stuff that is making you more anxious. In your grief, it's actually not helping you. I'm not telling you to turn off the radio, but find balance. So at night, find a healing frequency channel. You can look up binaural beats. You can just look up like 428 hertz. You can just put in healing frequencies into the taskbar and find a playlist that plays for 9-10 hours. Listen to it while you sleep, right? Because that's when your subconscious is working. And you don't have to do anything, just go to bed. But what it's doing is reprogramming your cells to hear beautiful sounds and healing sounds, and to combat what your cells have been facing all day. That is one of the easiest, most passive, freest ways to help heal your body, to help move things through your body, is to listen to sound healing music.
I love that. Can I ask you for a playlist that we can like?
Yes, I have some good playlists. I really have some great ones.
We can share.
And there's such a difference when you really do listen to it. And again, I'm not telling people to turn off the radio because I don't want to hear nobody's mess. But there is also something to be said when you do start to change the balance, listen to a little bit less of that and a little bit more of binaural beats and healing frequencies. You will notice that your mood changes. Like, you absolutely will when you start paying attention.
Yeah. And I would be so interested to know if like any artists have their music to those older frequencies.
So there are some that have come out and they will specifically say, like when Andre 3000 did his flute thing, he said it was specifically tied to the ancient frequency. They don't use terms like ancient frequency, but he said it was like tied to like 428 or something. There have been some that come out and say that, but no, music industry and contract. So
I just
they gotta play.
I just stumbled across that same research, and I was very shocked, and I was upset too, because I'm like, I flood my ears with this junk. I love it. I love the junk. But yeah, like I was shocked to hear that, and I found my way to these frequencies on my Spotify. I have a playlist because same balance. Like I'll be in my car on like a long commute somewhere, and I'll blast my crappy music that
Yeah.
I like. And then maybe at night I'm listening to that frequency because I'm just like, can we get this back? Can we find some artists? Like,
Yeah.
can we convince them to bring this back?
There's like a reason for both, right? Like I'm absolutely for, and I train people in the academy to like have your clients twerk, put on some trap music, like shake your ass. That is also healing. Like,
Yes.
believe me, there's a reason for it. But you also have to start to question things. And in this day of knowledge, you have to ask yourself why an entire government would change a frequency of music after a war to help keep people online. And they were very public about that. So if governments understand how powerful the frequency of music is and are using it against you, then why wouldn't you be using it to benefit you?
Oh, God.
Right? Kind of seems like you're letting them play in your face. Like,
Yep. Yep. Oh my gosh. I mean, my example is far less, I guess, less deep. I'll just use my own personal experience and I'll throw journaling out there. I think journaling is just like a simple tool, and I know that it's not for everybody, but I think that it is all in how you use it. And again, yeah, do your research. It's like, and it is so simple, like getting a journal, getting a pen, or whether you prefer typing, or maybe you talk into your phone and use your notes app. Like, now there's so many ways. Journaling, quite literally, I think saved my life through grief. I found it to be medicine. I think that it's medicine. Putting your own thoughts onto paper, and there's so many different types, right? You can do like a stream of consciousness and just literally write anything that is coming to your mind. It has to make zero sense to anybody else except you. I would write like, I still have some of my very early journal entries after I lost my dad, and they were just angry rants. They were angry rants. I was talking to him in a lot of them. I was talking to God in a lot of them. I was just pissed, right? And I think that I worked through a lot of that with the pen. And then I made my way to obviously maybe doing it like, not that it wasn't healthy, but in a more, I don't know, like kind of pulling the insights out of it. Like, what am I learning here? How am I like, what insights do I have? What wisdom am I learning? How can I move forward through this? And then I turned it into other forms of writing, like started to write like blog entries. So like it can kind of just, it grows with you as you grieve, and it will change as your grief changes, so will you, and vice versa. But I just think that there's so much science behind it. I will not pretend like I know all the science behind it, but there is something to taking what's here, getting it out of you, not letting it. I always find that my thoughts tend to create a monstrous effect in my mind if I keep them here. So if I put them onto paper, they're less scary, and I've now processed them, and you can leave it here. And I also think it's a great tool in your resilience. If you ever want to look back, I know reflecting gets a bad rap. I actually kind of love reflecting if it's a way to help you move forward. So I like to look at some of my old entries and see how much I have grown and how much I have changed and how much my mindset has changed. So while it can be, of course, a little triggering for me to look at some of those old entries, it's also helpful, and it's showing me the resilience that I have inside of me. So I can't speak enough about journaling. And there's just, like I said, there's so many different ways. And I know it's hard to, I love how you said rituals though earlier. It's like finding a schedule that works for you. Are you a morning journaler? Are you a morning page person? Is it fresh in your mind? You're coming out of that like sleep state, or do you like to do it at nighttime? It's like finding what works best for you. And I think I've kind of settled, just, the craziness of my life. Got two little kids, so I tend to do it like at nighttime. There's just no energy to me in the morning. We're not nice until we get coffee. So like, yeah, like at nighttime, I'll just sit there and reflect. I love reflecting and putting a pen to paper. So that is my, I guess, simple tool. I think, and there's also guided journaling. You can use prompts. I love doing prompts. If you can't, maybe pull your own insights out and that's intimidating to you, we can use prompts, and you can find a question. There's guided journals. Like, I know, again, we're trying to talk low costs, but there are maybe affordable guided journals that you can find on Amazon. But yeah, that's kind of the tool that I think works really well.
I love that. And I just want to piggyback on that is also like people, I think, underestimate how powerful journaling is. Like it used to be called scribing, right? And it was the power of they understood the power of putting pen to paper, and not just what it could bring about perhaps in your life, but what it could release from you. And it was a very ancient form of divination. Like you talked about doing stream of consciousness, like, it's also called automatic writing. And it was like to just write. Within the academy, we do it as a way of ancestral work, of when you are feeling like in your grief journey, or if you are someone who is transitioning from this physical life and there are things that you want to get out, or a conversation that you weren't able to have with somebody, or a message that you are hoping to send out into the spiritual realm, right, to an ancestor, is just to write and to not think about grammar and punctuation. And these are all, again, it's like we need to go back to these. Like it is not just, I think people see things like journals or something on Amazon, and it's like, well, oh, that's not deep enough. It's like, well, it is if you make it, right? Like if you're remembering what it's connected to, if you're realizing it's not just a thing that's trendy, it's a very ancient practice, and it's there for a reason, and it's free. So yeah.
I agree.
Journaling, awesome.
I love that, how you relate it to, it's been around forever. People have been scribing and the sounds and all these things. I love how you pull into the ancient practice, because it's like, and I talk about something that has changed. It's like, why were we taught that it's called New Age, right? Why was it given that name if this has been around for so long? And I'm just like, it's funny because it's only new to me. Like it's just come into my orbit in the last couple of years, but I'm enamored. I'm fascinated by it, and I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, and that hopefully bringing some light to people that it's the therapy, the line doesn't stop at therapy or medication. It goes beyond. There is so much that can help you, and that's why we're here.
I also just want to say you can also do both, right? We haven't touched on that yet. Like there are lots of people, I think sometimes people always think it's like you must choose one or the other. So I'm either someone who goes to therapy, or I'm someone who does yoga. Like I'm either somebody who goes to church, or I'm somebody that does Reiki. It's like you absolutely do not have to put yourself in that box. Like you can do all of the things. And so I think one thing I want people to take from this is like, you don't have to choose, but this is really about like, know how many options there are. And what I do hope people get from this is like, your body is probably more important than you have thought in the journey and this walk with loss. So add it to the list of things to pay attention to.
I so agree, and I couldn't relate more to that. Of don't put yourself in a box. Let yourself branch out to so many different things. I so agree. Don't stay put. Try lots of things, and just because you might be on this side doesn't mean you can't go over here. And yes, I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Hopefully you don't hear the noise outside, because now it's moved to outside my window. Okay, great. Yes, I think oftentimes we separate the mind and the body, and it's all connected. They're all on the same person. So we need to take care of our body equally as much as our mind. And so we're like, who's on the team, right? It's like we have a host of doctors for our body. We wouldn't go see our dentist about, if we had an issue with our knee, right? We would go see if we had a hormonal issue. We're going to see the endo, not the primary, right? So it's like we go to see all of these different doctors when it comes to our body. So when it comes to our, we know grief is not technically a mental health condition, but it impacts so many different parts of our mind. So that's why we wanted to have this conversation. And yes, absolutely, we need to. I'm a person that did all of the things. I'm like, I did yoga, I did church, I did therapy. Like, I'm like, listen, maybe it's my Gemini, but I'm like, I need a lot of different things to help me through. So here we are. So I want to thank you ladies so much for joining me and having this conversation. I think it is like the start, because there are so many new things out there. Not even new. There are so many things that are being repackaged as new that have been around for a long time. Because I'm a slight conspiracy theorist, I feel like because we cannot, I feel like because grief has not quite been monetized by the healthcare industry, that's why these things are, put in the categories that they are. But once they do get monetized, then that's when, all of the things are going to not be quote unquote new age. But until they are, here we are. And also, once you find out that the spiritual practices that we talked about are healing, then where do meds and all these other things go? Now you're impacting farmers. So here we are.
That's exactly it. You have to ask yourself, like, why would they have sold this as new age? Because it does not profit for them. Like, why don't they want you to know that you can help heal yourself? Because it does not profit for them.
There's no profit in touching grass. And get it. And I get it. Like, I know there'll be, hey, listen, I'm a hot take girly. So I know there'll be like, we're talking about licensed and unlicensed. Listen, yes, none of us are licensed. We get it. I'm not saying there's not any value in being licensed. I have seen a therapist. I understand. I understand that people need to have licensure. That does not mean that before, we have to understand pharma is new. People were healing themselves with herbs, etc. before. That also does not mean that people don't need meds, because we know that things have also progressed in major ways and that people do need medication. So we're not saying that there's not a need for it, but we are saying that there is a space where people are being overprescribed things and that there are other steps that could have been taken or other natural measures that are in place that are not even on the table, because we're not looking at it. Like, even for my insulin resistance, there were things that like I started to do naturally that got rid of a lot of the issues I was having. And my endo was actually really like, oh yeah, we'll take you off this, we'll take you off that. That was the first time I ever had a doctor that was like, oh yeah, you can start to come off these things. I've never had a doctor that actually was okay with me starting to come off of medication because I started to make different lifestyle changes. First time ever. And I was completely shocked, but most won't. They'll just continue to prescribe you things. So anyway, that's a part of a whole bigger conversation.
I also want to circle back to many side of like the licensure part for therapists. Like, we understand the value of that. I think there's also something he said for also understanding the training that healers have. And I say this to say that sometimes when people go to the spiritual side, there's this belief of, well, it's woo-woo, so it should be free, right? Or it's spiritual, so they should be cheap. Like, there has to be an also respect for the practices that wait for you on the other side. And I think sometimes when people are stepping toes into them because you have been programmed that this is some funky, trendy thing, you expect a facilitator, a healer, or someone to give you discount, free, cheap healing. These practices walk you to the underworld and back, right? People who have trained in spiritual work, who have spent decades of their life, it is not an easy path. And so I do think also, if you're going to step into that, is thinking about, am I approaching this with the respect that these people also deserve, in the same way that I approach a therapist who has her degree on the wall. These people are not, I'm not saying that they're all great, but most have not picked this up on the internet, right? This is years and decades of, a lot of time, lineage-based study that has been passed down for generations. And so I think that's also part of this, entering into, I'm going to try new things, is also not then treating those new things as like, I'm trying this on for shits and giggles. So it should be a shits and giggle kind of relationship, right?
Yes.
Yeah, having respect for the practice. Absolutely. Nikki, anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to, I agree with that sentiment as well. Having respect for everybody who puts their time, their energy, their studies.
Same thing with coaches.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Same thing with coaches. And that's what I meant to say. Like, same thing with coaches, guides, doulas. Like, these people have done the work. A lot of people are here because they also are grievers and are coming back to help other people because they didn't have the help themselves.
Yeah.
So I just think for all of us that sit in this work, it's like, in grief rising to the conversation, right, and becoming larger on the main stage is also like for all of us who do this work of just like we too are licensed, just a different license and a different certification and a different practice. And we ask, you know, for the same sort of care.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my gosh. Like, thank you for saying that. I think it's a very important topic now. And I know the conversation, I guess, isn't for us, but I love that you ended it like that because I'm noticing that as a coach of sort of, I feel at times, I just said this to a friend recently, like almost fighting for my validity in this space. Because I have immense respect for licensed therapists, licensed mental health counselors. I have dear friends that do this work. I almost went that path myself. But I just always feel like, yeah, coaches, I'll speak from my own experience, are sort of just like, I matter too. Like,
Mhm.
respect what I know and how I can help. And it might look different from the way that you can help, but I still feel like I can make an impact with the knowledge and the studies that I have beneath me and within me, and my lived experience. So thank you for saying that. I couldn't have said it better myself. I just hope that we have love and respect for everybody that's doing this work, because this is not for the faint of heart. Like, this is like some deep, can I swear, shit. Like, we're sitting in not only our own wounds, but other people's wounds. And we all do this, I think, with a whole lot of heart and love. And I think no matter what license or degree that you have, there's a lot to that. So yeah.
I agree. I think we can close on that note because I know we could all say a lot about it. Say that I think the conversation's for everyone. I think the conversation needs to continue to be had because there are a lot of different takes on the conversation. And I think that the conversation can be had respectfully, even if everyone doesn't agree and land in the same place. And I'll close on that note. Thank you again for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. Last thing, where can people find you? Anything that you have coming up that you want to share?
NicoleSimone.com is my website. I am mainly on Instagram, and it's just Nicole Simone _ There is a C in Simone. It is silent. And I have a few things coming up that I will be promoting on my Instagram, webinar and journaling workshops, but all of that will be on my website. So thank you so much for having us here.
And Sundari Malcolm, Instagram is Sundari Bliss or a Healing Doula Academy. And I can be found, my site is ahealingdoula.com. And so you can see all products and services and learn more about the academy there.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Talk to you later. Bye.